Earth, the adopted home world of Bjork. What are you? Now, the reason we have to talk about Earth tonight is this.
President Trump revealing his decision to the country, to the world. We're out, he says, pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord.
I was elected to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris.
OK, first, relax. No one for a second thought that you represented Paris. Partly because everyone knows Paris is represented by a smoking French bulldog who found the first course to be derivative and jeune. But it is true. This week, Trump announced he would pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement, which is hardly surprising. As a title, it is so off-brand for him, it might as well have been called The Globalist Cuck Surrender or A Light Jog. Yet pulling out of this is a huge deal. And to understand why, it helps to keep in mind one key number, and it's 2 degrees Celsius. Now, it's a bit of a shorthand, but the concern is that if we fail to limit temperature rise to that number, things get very bad and potentially irreversible.
Scientists say we'll likely see longer droughts and more intense heat waves, which could cause big disruptions to the world's food supply.
If we don't start with rapid emissions reductions and substantial emissions reductions, that will pass a danger point beyond which the consequences for many people and countries on Earth will simply become unacceptable and eventually disastrous.
It's true, and we are not talking about a fictional apocalypse like the one in the movie 2012. We're talking about an actual global disaster like the movie 2012. And the serious danger may actually be more imminent than you think. One estimate says that to have a good chance of avoiding the 2-degree threshold, human emissions of CO2 should stay below this level in total. This is our so-called carbon budget, and by the end of last year, we were estimated to already be up to here. And if current emission trends continue, we would go above that critical line in about 20 years. And that is not a long time. 20 years ago, South Park was on TV, Foo Fighters were touring, and Paul Rudd looked like this. What I'm saying is, 20 years ago was basically now. So the Paris Agreement's central aim was to try and keep our global temperature rise below that 2-degree threshold. And to do that, each signatory would set their own goals with a plan to reconvene every 5 years to ideally set more ambitious targets. And look, it was not perfect. Some critics at the time felt that it did not go far enough, but the key achievement was for the very first time getting virtually the entire world, including China and India, to commit to taking action. It was a historic moment, and it was celebrated like this.
The moment the world agreed to tackle climate change.
L'accord de Paris pour le climat est accepté.
And so the Paris Agreement was born, and emotions spilled over. So much so that Lawrence Fabius banged the gavel again.
So, I have been asked to bang the gavel again. It's a little gavel, but I think it can do great things.
OK. Listen, I'll say this. If you are trying to convince people of the gravity of a moment, maybe don't use such a humiliatingly shitty gavel, because it just undercuts what you're trying to say. It would not be appropriate for a judge to conclude a death penalty case by saying, I hereby sentence you to hang by the neck until dead. May God have mercy upon your soul. Right? Solemn moment for everybody. So why did Trump announce that he would pull out this week? Well, one clue may have come during his speech on Thursday when he actually talked about that happy celebration that you just saw, but seemed to see something sinister in it.
The rest of the world applauded when we signed the Paris Agreement. They went wild. They were so happy. For the simple reason that it put our country, the United States of America, which we all love, at a very, very big economic disadvantage.
What are you talking about? They were happy because they secured a landmark victory for the future of the planet, you fucking egomaniac. The whole world is not secretly conspiring against the United States. The only thing the whole world is secretly conspiring to do is convince everyone that there are two Olsen twins. There is no way it is just one girl moving very quickly backwards and forwards. It's an optical illusion. The Olsen twins thing is a massive scam, and the whole world is in on it, and the only thing that I don't quite know yet is why. But we don't have time to get into it. The point is, if the agreement was a scheme to hurt American businesses, you know who that might be news to? Many American businesses, because they were not just in favour of this agreement, they even made a last-ditch attempt to change Trump's mind.
25 companies, including Microsoft and Intel, have purchased a full-page ad in today's New York Times arguing the agreement generates jobs and economic growth.
Well, come on, I mean, he was clearly never going to be convinced by an ad in the New York Times. How was he going to see it? If those companies really wanted to get his attention, they needed to talk KFC into putting out a full bucket ad, which he would read on the toilet while eating chicken, because that, at its core, is who our president is. But it turned out that rather than listening to those companies, the president was getting advice from climate change skeptics like his EPA chief, Scott Pruitt, and human custody hearing, Steve Bannon. Although really, Trump's actions were in keeping with a long-held skepticism that he has concerning climate change. He has called it expensive bullshit and a hoax created by China, and he repeatedly brought that idea up on the campaign trail, often before losing track of what he was talking about and performing real-time word association.
China isn't abiding by anything. They're buying all of our coal. We can't use coal anymore, essentially. They're buying our coal and they're using it. Now, when you talk about the planet, it's so big out there. We're here, they're there. It's like they're our next-door neighbor, right? In terms of the universe. Miss Universe, by the way, made a great deal when I sold her. Oh, did I get rich? That was a great deal. Oh. You know, they broke my choppers on that. They said, he talks about illegal immigration. We're not going to put him on television. First of all, the Univision's being sued like crazy. You wouldn't believe it. And NBC, I made a great deal with them, just like an amazing deal.
Why can't you finish a thought? Why can't you finish a thought? That was 36 seconds, touching on at least 7 different topics, including the non-phrase broke my choppers, and yet he did not conclude a single thought there. A goldfish would hear that speech and go, hey, focus, get back to China. You were talking about China. What is wrong with this guy? Oh, God, I'm drowning! And look, when you combine Trump's lack of attention to detail with his deep-rooted paranoia, you get the wildly misleading reasons that he cited on Thursday for pulling out of Paris. For instance, he seemed to think the agreement committed America to shutting down coal-fired power plants.
China will be allowed to build hundreds of additional coal plants. So we can't build the plants, but they can, according to this agreement. India will be allowed to double its coal production by 2020. Think of it. India can double their coal production. We're supposed to get rid of ours.
Okay. For the record, the agreement doesn't actually ban America from building coal plants. It doesn't even contain the word coal. Each country sets its own goals that it can meet however it wants. So that is wrong. That's just wrong. As is the fact that Trump said in his speech America would continue to be the cleanest and most environmentally friendly country on Earth, which is objectively untrue because over history the US has emitted by far more carbon than any other country, and we still emit more per person than almost any other nation. So that's like Mark Wahlberg saying he's going to continue to be the best dentist on the planet. How? How are you going to do that? That's not what you are, Mark. Maybe you could decide to do that one day, but you're definitely not doing it now. Then there is Trump's concern over the Green Climate Fund, which finances projects in developing nations, helping them adapt to the impacts of climate change and reduce their emissions. Watch now as Trump describes that fund.
The Green Fund would likely obligate the United States to commit potentially tens of billions of dollars, of which the United States has already handed over $1 billion. Nobody else is even close.
Okay. Now, to his credit, that is actually an impressive amount of misleading bullshit in very few words. In fact, here is everything that he just said. Let's break those words down. First, the Green Fund. It's not called the Green Fund, it's called the Green Climate Fund. I know, but still. Then would likely obligate the United States to commit money. There is no enforcement mechanism in the Paris Agreement. The US could just easily refuse to pay the bill, something Donald Trump has a lifetime of practice doing. As for the potentially tens of billions of dollars, no, we committed $3 billion. You can't just inflate 3 to potentially tens. I can't say that you have had potentially tens of failed marriages. I can only say you've had 3, because you have. You have had 3 failed marriages, and yes, I'm very much including your current one. And finally, nobody else is even close to paying more. That is just willfully misleading. While we have given the most so far in sheer dollars, we are one of the richest countries and one of the top emitters. And when you rank contributions as a fraction of GDP, we are 32nd. So Trump's description of the agreement is so flamboyantly deceptive. It would have been equally accurate for him to say compliance with the Paris Agreement would likely require all ducks to wear jean shorts, and that it would potentially cost each and every American citizen 5 fish and a dump truck full of hamsters. That would be as true as what he just said. And even when he tried to strike a reassuring tone, he got it wrong.
So we're getting out. But we will start to negotiate, and we will see if we can make a deal that's fair. And if we can, that's great. And if we can't, that's fine.
Except no, it is not fine, is it? Because the leaders of Germany, France and Italy said in a statement, "We firmly believe that the Paris Agreement cannot be renegotiated," and I would not test Europe's leaders when it comes to pulling out of a major international agreement. Britain is trying that bullshit right now with Brexit, and maybe you can send your demands to the same email address that Europe set up for that. It's lick.rnuts@gofuckyourselves.eu. So drop them a line. Drop them a line. They'll answer. But I have saved Trump's most ludicrous misunderstanding of the agreement for last, because for a man who cites the agreement's strict, onerous and draconian terms, what he does not seem to comprehend is each nation sets its own goals, remember? And more importantly, the whole thing is fucking voluntary.
The agreement as a whole is not legally binding and doesn't penalise nations who fail to meet their commitments. But it does include a process designed to shame them into compliance.
It's true. The only penalty was shame. And unfortunately, this president is completely immune to the very concept of that. If they even tried to shame him into compliance, he could just hold up this photo of him in a too-short bathrobe on what appears to be a child's bed and say, "I posed for that. You cannot hurt me any more than I've already hurt myself." And at this point, you may be thinking, well, hold on, if it's all voluntary, then what is the harm in leaving? Well, the truth is, it's substantial. And let's start with just the harm to America's standing in the world alone. Because Trump's decision to leave this agreement has pissed off almost everyone.
This morning, German Chancellor Angela Merkel called it extremely regrettable. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called it disheartening. And the Vatican went further, saying Mr. Trump's decision was a disaster for everyone.
Wow! Think about that. We are getting shit-talked by the Vatican. And not by the Nazi Pope, the cool one. That's worse. That is like getting into a Twitter fight with the Dalai Lama. He doesn't snap often, but when he snaps hard. And look, that reputational harm can have real costs for businesses abroad. One environmental negotiator who worked in the George W. Bush administration described this decision as the worst thing for brand America since Abu Ghraib. And that is rough, because a bad association can stick with a brand for a long time. Just ask sexual assault pudding cups, double murder car rentals, or Mr. Touchy's fresh and tasty pedo sandwiches. And then there is the harm to American workers, the very people Trump is claiming to protect. Because most of the world now realises that in order to reduce emissions, we need to shift to renewable forms of energy. And the more a government encourages that, the faster it happens, the quicker costs come down, and the more likely that that country is to be at the forefront of a whole new industry, creating countless jobs in the process. And you know who knows that? China. Or as Trump would say, China. Trump just handed a huge advantage to them. They've not only cancelled plans to build more than 100 coal-fired power plants, they're also dramatically increasing investment elsewhere.
China plans to spend more than $360 billion on renewable energy by 2020, which it says will create at least 13 million new jobs.
So you know what? In a way, Trump is fulfilling his campaign promise. He is creating millions of new jobs. He's just doing it for the wrong fucking country. And if you want proof that the jobs of today and tomorrow are in renewable energy, France's new president, Emmanuel Macron, actually issued a call this week to America's workforce.
To all scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs, responsible citizens who were disappointed by the decision of the President of the United States, I want to say that they will find in France a second homeland. I call on them, come and work here with us.
I guess what he's saying there is, be our guest, be our guest. Put ourselves to the test. Tie a napkin round you. You know what? We don't have time for this. Stop. We don't. I'm sorry, Lumiere. I'm sorry, Mrs. Potts. I'm sorry, Cogsworth. You gotta go. You gotta go. Quick, this is my fault. Get the fuck out of here, you little fuckers. Get out. Get out. But look, the real concern here is that America's absence from the Paris Agreement could make other countries less inclined to meet their commitments. And remember, that could quickly become catastrophic. And that brings us to our final point. Given that we cannot afford just to wait 4 years to vote Trump out of office, what can be done now? Well, for starters, companies need to continue to step up. And to their credit, some like Walmart and Bank of America have set deadlines to power themselves completely with renewable energy. And nearly half of the Fortune 500 companies, including Philip Morris International, have pledged to reduce their carbon footprint in the coming years. That is right. This is a story where Walmart, Bank of America, and Philip Morris end up being the good guys. Which just feels inherently surprising. It's like I just said, great news, everyone. Ebola, ISIS, and that dentist who shot Cecil the lion are going to save the planet for us. Thanks, guys. You're the best. You are the best. And look, it is not just companies stepping up. In the wake of Trump's decision, multiple governors have announced their intention to hold themselves to the Paris Agreement goals, as have many mayors, including, notably, the mayor of Pittsburgh. You know, the city that Trump cited as the reason he was pulling out of the agreement. Their mayor, Bill Peduto, was pretty clear about what he thinks about Trump's decision.
Pittsburgh is the poster child of showing why the Paris Agreement is good economics for the United States. And what we did today sets us back decades.
Wow. That is pleasantly surprising on so many levels, not the least of which is I had always just assumed that Pittsburgh's mayor was a Heinz ketchup-drenched Lombardi trophy. So we're all learning a lot of things tonight. But what this means is that the onus is now on politicians at the state and local level to do what Donald Trump cannot be bothered to. And unfortunately, that means that you now need to find out where your mayor, your governor, and even your state reps stand on climate change. And first, you'll have to find out who they are, but then you will need to find out their positions. And look, maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe yours is great. Or maybe you live in Pennsylvania and you're represented by State Senator Scott Wagner, who has an interesting theory for what might be causing global warming.
The Earth moves closer to the sun every year. We have more people. You know, humans have warm bodies, so is heat coming off? We're just going through a lot of change, but I think we are, as a society, doing the best we can.
I don't even know where to begin there. I mean, yes, the Earth does move closer to the sun every year, but then it moves further away from the sun, because that is what a fucking year is. Our body heat is not warming the planet, and we are clearly not doing the best we can because we keep putting idiots like Scott Wagner in positions of power. And he is not alone. In North Carolina, they're considering a bill that would freeze progress that state has made towards renewable energy. And one of the people who would have a vote on that is State Rep Larry Pittman. So, what is Larry's nuanced take on climate?
Our climate runs on a cycle. It goes up and it goes down, and the Lord designed it that way. And the main thing that causes global warming is the Earth's relationship to a big ball of gas that's burning out there that we call the sun. And it is the height of hubris for human beings to think that we can have any effect on that.
No, Larry, no. The height of hubris is not opposing climate change against God's will. The height of hubris is, according to Wikipedia, 6'2", and he just pulled us out of the Paris Agreement. So, if your local reps resemble those guys in any way, you're going to need to work to get them out of office as soon as you can. And all of this is going to take work, attention, and energy. And I know that's not easy, but Trump may have inadvertently done us a tiny favour this week, because the problem with climate change is that it's always felt so abstract, impersonal, and far off into the future. And the usual symbols that we use don't do much to fix or help that. It's either a graph that's difficult to understand or a sad polar bear on a small piece of ice. And it's hard to get emotionally fired up over that. I don't even know that bear. He could be a dick. But finally, this week, the climate change movement may have gotten a symbol to rally around, because apparently it was never quite enough for us to motivate ourselves out of love for this large gassy orb. But maybe, just maybe, we can now motivate ourselves to do something out of our loathing of this one.